There's a moment in all of our lives, quiet and hidden, where we wonder with trembling hearts, God, when will it happen for me? We don't always say it out loud. Sometimes we don't even pray it outright, but it lives there in the silence between our dreams and our reality, in the waiting rooms of our lives, in the gaps between the promise and the fulfillment. And tonight, I want to speak to that place in you. Not the polished place, not the part of you that knows all the scriptures by heart, but the vulnerable, bruised, and aching place. The place that has learned how to smile in the hallway while every closed door whispers not yet. The place that is still holding on, even when faith feels like a whisper and not a shout. You'll see this when God knows you're ready. This is not just a phrase. It is not a poetic way of avoiding pain or postponing joy. It is a truth that shapes the rhythm of destiny. And what is destiny if not a divine appointment dressed in delay? See, when we think of God's timing, we often imagine a calendar. We think he is late or he is early, or we wish he would show us the date already. But God's timing isn't about clocks or calendars. It's about capacity. It's not just about when the thing is ready for you. It's about when you are ready for the thing. There are blessings that if you were to receive them prematurely would become burdens. There are relationships that if God had allowed them before you healed would have destroyed you. There are platforms that would have poisoned you had he not first purified your heart. And yet I know the waiting is not easy. Let me be real. There's a particular pain in seeing other people walk into the very thing you're praying for. It's hard not to feel overlooked when you've done all the right things and still the door remains closed. You tithed, you prayed, you fasted, you forgave, and still nothing. But God is not in the business of withholding. He's in the business of preparing. If you've ever watched a sculptor at work, you'll notice that their hands don't stop just because the shape is beginning to form. In fact, the more delicate the piece, the more detailed the chiseling. The preparation often intensifies right before the unveiling. I want you to hear this. You are not being punished. You are being processed. What feels like silence is sometimes strategy. What looks like denial is often divine redirection. What appears to be stillness is sacred setup. You'll see this. Yes, that thing your heart beats for, that purpose that burns in your bones, that answer to prayer you've dared to believe for, you will see it when God knows you're ready. Because God loves you too much to let you meet a moment you're not mature enough to manage. And that love often disguises itself as delay. Let me tell you a story, one of my favorite stories about timing, purpose, and preparation. It's about David, the shepherd boy who would become king. We all know the moment he killed Goliath. We celebrate that. But before David ever held a crown, he held sheep. In fields where no one applauded, in hills where no one saw, but God saw. God saw how David fought lions and bears in secret. And when the time came to fight Goliath, David didn't need to become anything different. He had already become. God didn't place him in front of the giant to promote him. He placed him there because he had already prepared him. So what if your giant moment isn't the beginning of your destiny? It's the confirmation of it. What if your waiting season is not about becoming visible, but about becoming viable? David's story teaches us that obscurity is often God's favorite training ground. That favor often finds you in the field, not on the stage. That the crown does not make the king, the character does. So maybe, just maybe, what you're calling delay is actually divine alignment. I think about Joseph, sold by his brothers, thrown in a pit, falsely accused, forgotten in prison, but still destined. Do you know how much patience and resilience it takes to keep believing in a dream when everything around you contradicts it? But God wasn't just positioning Joseph, he was preparing him. By the time Joseph stood before Pharaoh, he wasn't just a dreamer. He was an interpreter, a leader, a man forged by fire and seasoned by suffering. And when the famine came, when the very thing God had shown him years before became reality, Joseph didn't just see the dream, he stewarded it. That's what readiness looks like. Readiness is not about perfection. It's about capacity. It's about whether your character can carry your calling. It's about whether your heart can handle the weight of glory without crumbling under the pressure. And here's the thing about readiness. You don't always know when you're ready. Sometimes you feel unqualified right up until the moment you're called, but God knows. And that's enough. I know there are those of you listening tonight who are standing in front of locked doors with keys in your hands, wondering why they won't open. And I need you to understand, it's not because you're unworthy. It's not because you failed. It's because God's not finished forming you. There is a version of you that must emerge before the vision can manifest. Because when God blesses you, He doesn't want you to just receive it. He wants you to sustain it. If you've ever seen a fruit tree in bloom, you know the fruit doesn't grow overnight. First, the roots must go deep, then the branches stretch, then the buds appear, and only after much waiting, fruit. But even when you can't see it, the tree is growing. Your roots are growing. Your patience is growing. Your faith is growing. Even in silence, even in sorrow, even in solitude. And here's the beauty of God. He doesn't just use the good days to get you ready. He uses the broken ones too. The heartbreaks you thought would ruin you, they've refined you. The rejections you thought were setbacks, they've shaped your discernment. The seasons you cried yourself to sleep, they've deepened your capacity for compassion. None of it was wasted. God is not just writing your story. He is editing it, removing the things that don't serve the story. He's telling through you. And that's why you haven't seen it yet. Because the story God is telling with your life requires a version of you that only time, pressure, and pruning can produce. But it's coming. I need you to believe that. Even if you don't feel it. Even if you've stopped praying bold prayers because you're tired of the disappointment. Even if you've adjusted your expectations to avoid pain, you are still on schedule. God doesn't rush masterpieces. And yes, you are His masterpiece. Some of us think faith looks like always knowing. But sometimes faith is choosing to trust when you don't know. Faith is waking up each day and choosing to be faithful to a future you can't see yet. Faith is saying, even if I don't see it now, I know my readiness matters to God. And that's enough. You will see it when God knows you're ready. When the lessons have sunk deep enough to shape you. When the wounds have healed into wisdom. When the weight of the calling no longer intimidates but invites you. So keep becoming. Keep showing up in the field. Keep stewarding the small assignments with excellence. Keep saying yes in the unseen places. Because readiness isn't announced, it's revealed. You won't always get a warning. Sometimes the moment shows up like a sudden rainstorm, unexpected, but exactly what the soil of your soul has been waiting for. And when it comes, you won't have to force it. It will feel like alignment. It will feel like peace. It will feel like God whispering, now. There's a passage in the book of Habakkuk. It says, though the vision tarries, wait for it will surely come, it will not delay. That verse used to confuse me. How can something tarry and not delay at the same time? But I realize now God's definition of delay is different from ours. To us, delay means it's late. To God, delay means it's not aligned. There is a difference between being denied and being delayed. When God says not yet, He's not closing the door. He's closing the gap between your current self and your future assignment. So don't despise the gap. Don't rush through the process. Don't try to manipulate outcomes to escape the wilderness. The wilderness is not your punishment, it's your preparation. It's where idols are stripped. It's where intimacy with God is forged. It's where self-sufficiency dies so that trust can live. I know the wilderness doesn't feel holy, but it is, because it's there where there's no applause, no spotlight, no audience. It's there that God whispers the deepest truths. And when you're finally ready, truly ready, not just outwardly, but inwardly, God will move in such a way that you'll understand the delay. You'll look back and say, if it had happened then, I wouldn't have appreciated it. If it had come earlier, I would have mishandled it. If I had met them then, I would have pushed them away. Hindsight will reveal what faith had to carry blind. And when it happens, when the thing you've waited for appears, not only will you be ready for it, but it will feel as if it was waiting for you too. Because it was. So tonight I leave you with this. Don't measure your progress by the presence of outcomes. Measure it by the posture of your heart. Don't let delay make you doubt your identity. Don't let waiting rob you of wonder. Don't let what you haven't seen make you question what God has said. Because you will see it when God knows you're ready. Until then, keep becoming, keep believing, keep building. Even in the quiet, God is speaking. Even in the delay, God is designing. Even in the wilderness, God is working. You are not forgotten. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are simply becoming. And when the moment meets the maturity, when the promise collides with the preparation, you'll look around and see what God already knew. You were ready all along. And still, there's something else we must talk about. Something that sits deeper than timing or readiness. It's trust. Because to wait well, to endure the tension between vision and manifestation, requires more than patience. It requires trust in the nature of God. You see, trust is what holds you steady when faith feels shaky. Trust is what anchors you when your emotions betray you. Trust doesn't require you to understand. It simply requires you to remain. There's a difference between waiting and waiting in trust. One will exhaust you. The other will strengthen you. Trust says, even if it doesn't happen the way I imagined, I believe it will happen the way God intended. Trust redefines what it means to win. It teaches you that the promise is not the prize. He is. The closeness to God that is developed in the waiting, the dependency that is formed, the depth that is carved into your soul, those are not byproducts, those are blessings. And sometimes God allows the delay, not just to prepare you for the thing, but to prepare you to recognize that the thing is not the source. He is. Because what happens when we place our hope in the outcome and the outcome doesn't come? If our hope is in the healing, in the breakthrough, in the platform, in the partner, what happens to our identity if it all slips through our fingers? We must be anchored in something deeper. And that anchor is God's nature. He is faithful. He is not a man that he should lie. He is not careless with your life. He is not cruel. He is not absent. He is with you right now in the in-between, in the almost but not yet, in the tension. And that changes everything. Because when you know who is with you, you don't need to panic when the journey gets long. Let's be honest. We live in a world that idolizes instant results. We scroll through success stories and see highlight reels of lives that seem perfectly timed. But rarely do we see the waiting, the weeping, the warring seasons. We don't post about the nights we almost gave up. We don't record the moments we questioned everything we believed. We don't celebrate the hidden seasons, yet those are the seasons that actually define us. The slow seasons, the stretching seasons, the nothing's happening seasons. What if the most significant thing God is doing in your life right now is not something visible, but something internal? What if this is the season where he teaches you to trust him with no evidence, to obey him without clarity, to believe him without a blueprint? What if that is the very thing that qualifies you for what's next? Because when you finally get there, when the door opens, when the promise lands, when the vision breathes, you won't be who you were when you started. You'll have stories, not the kind that entertain, but the kind that carry authority. You'll have substance. You'll have scars, not as signs of defeat, but as testimonies of survival. You'll carry wisdom, not just from books, but from battlefields. And people will ask, how did you get here? And you won't answer with strategies or shortcuts. You'll say, God, it was always God. You'll say, he carried me, he kept me, he crushed me, and still called me. You'll say, I saw it when he knew I was ready, not a second before, not a moment late, because readiness is not just about capability. It's about intimacy. It's about knowing God's voice in such a way that when he says move, you move even if it defies logic. And this is where many of us hesitate. We think readiness means confidence. But in the kingdom of God, readiness is often marked by reverence, not bravado. When Moses stood before the burning bush, God called him. And what did Moses say? Who am I that I should go? He didn't feel ready. But God didn't answer by listing Moses' qualifications. God simply said, I will be with you. That is your readiness. His presence is your preparation. His presence is your strategy. His presence is your provision. So let go of the idea that you must feel ready to be ready. Feelings are not the measure of faith. Obedience is. You don't need to feel brave. You just need to be willing. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to say yes. You don't need to know the way. You just need to follow the one who does. And you must trust that he knows the right moment, not just for what's coming, but for what's happening in you right now. This is the version of you that's being strengthened, disciplined, softened, and sanctified. This is the version of you that will have the resilience to stand under pressure. This is the version of you that will not be seduced by applause or destroyed by criticism. This is the version of you that will walk into the room knowing that your identity is rooted, not in the room, but in the one who called you there. So don't rush this. Don't wish this season away. Don't curse the waiting. There is gold in this place. There is wisdom in this tension. There is revelation in this silence. And one day you will look back and realize this season made you. This waiting carved out a depth in you that no blessing ever could. This delay baptized you in trust. This pruning gave birth to purpose. And when you finally walk into that next thing, when you finally see it, you will recognize why you had to wait. You'll see that if you had walked in too soon, you would have settled, you would have conformed, you would have compromised. But the waiting built discernment. The stretching built strength. The silence sharpened your sensitivity to God. So now you're not just walking into a promise, you're walking in with power. You're walking in knowing that you don't need to chase validation because God already stamped his approval. You're walking in knowing you don't need to compete because purpose is never a competition. You're walking in knowing that this thing, whatever this is, wasn't just something you wanted. It was something God appointed. And what God appoints, he sustains. This is why the waiting matters, because it doesn't just get you to the thing, it gets the thing ready for you. You are not just waiting for a moment. A moment is being prepared for you. A moment that has your name on it. A moment that fits your voice, your gift, your mantle. And when it arrives, it won't be something you have to fight to keep. Because what God births through process cannot be stolen by pressure. I feel so strongly that someone needs to be reminded, you're not behind, you're not invisible, you're not too late. You are right on time for your becoming. And becoming is not loud, it's not public. It doesn't always look like progress, but it is sacred, and God is in it. He is in the healing, he is in the hiddenness, he is in the humbling, because he doesn't just want to give you a moment, he wants to give you a movement. He wants to build something through you that outlasts applause, that transcends seasons, that touches generations, that speaks of a God who knows the end from the beginning and still chooses to walk with you in the middle. And maybe that's the real blessing, not the outcome, but the intimacy, not the destination, but the discovery of who he is and who you've become along the way. So tonight, as you wrestle with what has not yet come to pass, I invite you to shift the question. Instead of asking, when will it happen? Ask, who am I becoming in the waiting? Instead of asking, why the delay? Ask, what is God developing in me? And instead of wondering if he's forgotten you, dare to believe this. You are being remembered by heaven in ways you don't even see. The doors are not closed because you are unloved. They are closed because you are being deeply loved. Because love protects, love prepares, love waits until the soil is fertile enough to hold the seed. So the next time you feel like it's taking too long, remember this. You'll see it when God knows you're ready, not when you're desperate, not when you're exhausted, not when you're trying to prove something, but when you're aligned, when your heart is soft enough to serve, not just shine. When your ego has bowed low enough to make space for grace, when your confidence no longer comes from your accomplishments, but from your Creator, that's readiness. And when God sees that, when heaven bears witness to your surrender, things move. Not because you force them, but because God knows you're ready to carry what he's been waiting to give. So walk in peace tonight. Not because you see it, but because you know he sees you. Not because everything is clear, but because your heart is grounded. And if you do that, if you choose to trust when you cannot trace, to believe when you cannot see, to surrender when you don't understand, you'll walk into the future with the authority of one who knows, I waited, I grew, I stayed, and now I'm ready. Because the truth is, readiness is rarely loud. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or perfect clarity. It settles into you quietly, like wisdom, like maturity, like the final note in a song you didn't realize had been building for so long. It's not always about acquiring something new. Sometimes it's about realizing what you've had all along. It's the awareness that the fire didn't destroy you, it refined you. The delay didn't disqualify you, it distinguished you. You see, we spend so much time measuring progress by the standards of visibility. We ask ourselves, do they see me yet? Do they recognize what I carry? But the truest signs of spiritual and emotional maturity don't often show up in what's seen. They show up in how we respond when no one is watching. They show up in how we love when we are not loved in return. in how we serve without recognition, in how we remain obedient when there's no applause. That's readiness. Readiness is when the applause doesn't move you more than his approval, when disappointment doesn't dislodge your devotion, when faith becomes less about results and more about relationship. I wonder if you've noticed this truth in your own life. The things that came to you too early almost always became a burden instead of a blessing. We ask for the thing before we've been built for the weight of it. We want the crown but not the cross. We want destiny without the death of self. But anything that arrives before its appointed time has the potential to sabotage the very thing God wants to sustain. And so he waits. He waits with you. Not just until you get it right, not until you're perfect. He waits until you're surrendered, until you stop seeing the delay as punishment and start seeing it as protection. Until you stop striving for control and start abiding in trust. Because readiness doesn't mean flawless, it means yielded. Yielded enough to go where he leads. Yielded enough to stop when he says wait. Yielded enough to let go of the good so you can receive what is truly God. And sometimes that process will look like letting things fall apart so the right things can come together. Sometimes readiness looks like release, like pruning, like walking away from what once gave you identity because God is calling you into something greater than you've ever known. But can you let go of the familiar to make room for the future? Can you surrender the version of your life you envision to embrace the one God has authored? Because you can't be both the architect and the offering. You either yield to the builder or you build something he won't bless. And the beautiful thing is God never wastes a surrendered heart. He never overlooks the one who yields. He sees every silent yes. He honors every private sacrifice. And in his time, he makes everything beautiful, not rushed, not partial, not makeshift, beautiful. This is what you'll see when God knows you're ready. You'll see why the detour had to happen. You'll see why they walked away. You'll see why you didn't get what you thought you couldn't live without, because it would have kept you from discovering what you were truly made for. And perhaps the most sacred part of all of this is that when the promise does come, it won't feel like a rescue. It will feel like a reunion, like something inside you knew this was always the place, the assignment, the purpose, and you were just waiting for the timing to align. And in that moment, you won't need to strive to keep it. You'll steward it with grace because you've already been made into the kind of person who can handle what you once only hoped for. You'll lead with integrity because you've been led through fire. You'll create with purity because you were purified in the dark. You'll love with depth because you've been loved in the depths of your own brokenness. This is what God does. He prepares you privately for what he will reveal publicly. And he does it not to withhold from you, but to protect what he wants to build through you. Because his dream for your life is bigger than the temporary satisfaction of visibility. His dream is generational, eternal. It's about legacy, not just moments. So if you're in the middle of the stretch right now, if you feel the tension between what you believe and what you see, I want to tell you, you're not being overlooked. You're being overseen by a God who knows the exact moment when your life is ready to intersect with destiny. He knows when your gift will no longer compete with your character. He knows when your anointing can finally be trusted with the assignment. He knows when you've healed enough to not bleed on the people you're called to lead. He knows, so rest in that. Rest in knowing that his timing is not passive, it's precise. His silence is not absence, it's strategy. You don't have to manipulate outcomes. You don't have to make it happen. What's for you will find you when you've become the version of yourself who can receive it and not a moment before. Because God is not in the business of rushing what he wants to last. He is the author of time, not a victim of it. He's not nervous about your timeline. He's not worried that you're behind. He's not trying to catch up with the pace of the world. He is shaping you according to the rhythm of eternity, not the trends of a culture that constantly demands more, but knows so little of depth. So protect your soul from that pressure. Be still enough to hear his whisper again. Clear the noise that keeps convincing you you're not enough yet. You are not late. You are in process, and that process is holy. I need you to understand something deeply tonight. You are not just waiting for a thing to change. You are becoming the kind of person who won't be changed by the thing. That's the goal. And when God sees that, when he sees that the pressure has not distorted your purpose, that the silence has not stolen your song, that the waiting has not hardened your heart, he releases what has always been yours. Not just because he's good, but because now you're good ground. So hold this season with reverence. Speak well of it, even if it hurts. Bless it, even when you don't understand it. Because one day someone will need the wisdom you are cultivating now. They will sit at your feet. They will lean into your voice. They will draw from your journey, and you won't give them theories. You'll give them truth. You'll speak with an authority that was born in the place where you learned to say, I will trust him. Even here, that is what readiness looks like. It looks like obedience when nothing is working. It looks like faithfulness when no one is watching. It looks like worship with tears still in your eyes. It looks like standing when everything tells you to quit. And if you can do that, if you can remain when it would be easier to run, then you are already more ready than you know. Not ready because of what you carry, but because of who you've become. And so I leave you with this. You don't need to chase the future. It is being woven into your today. You don't need to fear missing out. What is divine cannot be derailed. You don't need to rush the process. There is beauty in the becoming. You'll see it when God knows you're ready. And when you do, you'll realize it was never about the thing. It was always about the journey that prepared you to receive it. So may you walk out of here tonight, not with answers, but with peace. Peace in the waiting. Peace in the wondering. Peace in the unseen. Because readiness is not a destination. It is a posture. And if your heart is open, surrendered, and aligned, then heaven is already moving on your behalf. You may not see it yet, but you will when God knows you're ready. Amen. And even as you carry this message with you, let it not become just a hopeful phrase or a poetic comfort. Let it become a new lens, a sacred way of seeing your life. Let it inform how you move, how you respond, how you speak over your process. Because once you internalize this truth, you start to interpret delay differently. You stop calling the hidden place a punishment. You start recognizing it as preparation. You begin to realize that the delay isn't the enemy. It's the environment where your roots are growing deeper than you imagined. And anything rooted deeply enough can survive any storm. You also begin to lose your appetite for premature platforms. You become less enamored with performance and more devoted to alignment. You no longer crave recognition. You crave relevance to the purpose of God in your life. Not relevance to culture, not relevance to trends, relevance to heaven, relevance to the unique weight you were designed to carry. There's something powerful that happens when you stop seeing life as something to achieve and begin to see it as something to steward. You stop measuring success by what you've attained and start measuring it by what's been transformed within you. And in that place, God can trust you. Because now you're not just asking for influence, you're asking for impact. You're not just asking for access, you're asking for assignment. You're not just asking for favor, you're asking for faithfulness. And that is the posture of someone who's truly ready. Not someone who's simply desperate to move forward, but someone who has made peace with the present. Someone who understands that being found by God in the secret place is far more powerful than being seen by man in the public place. So I ask you now, what would change if you stopped trying to prove your readiness and started trusting that God is preparing you? What would happen if you began to move through life with the assurance that the right doors will open? Not because you knocked the loudest, but because God deemed the time perfect. What if you stopped treating your process like something to escape and started treating it like something holy? Because some of the most defining seasons in your life will not be marked by external advancement, but by internal awakening. By the moment you realize that your identity was never meant to be built on what you do, but on who you are becoming. There is something sacred about becoming. There is something deeply divine about the way God shapes character in the shadows. And those shadows are not an absence of light. They are an extension of his hand, shielding you, teaching you, slowing you down so that you can move with divine precision when the time comes. And yes, it takes courage to embrace that kind of becoming because it's vulnerable to wait. It's vulnerable to hope for something that hasn't shown up yet. It's vulnerable to believe again when you've been disappointed before, but vulnerability is not weakness. In fact, it is one of the most profound evidences of strength. To stay soft in a world that demands hard edges, to keep showing up in prayer when the answers are still silent, to continue loving when you've been broken, to keep creating, serving, leading, even when the applause is absent. That is strength, that is faith, that is readiness, and God sees it. He's not ignoring your effort. He's not blind to your wrestle. He's not unmoved by your obedience. He is shaping something in you that will hold more than you imagined. Because when you're ready, truly ready, you won't just receive what you asked for, you'll receive what you were actually born for. And those two things are not always the same. Sometimes we ask for things based on our present hunger, but God gives based on our eternal purpose. He sees beyond the immediate. He sees beyond the now. And because he sees, he waits, not to deprive, but to deliver something greater than you even knew to ask for. So don't be discouraged if your timeline doesn't look like theirs. Don't be disheartened if your journey looks longer, harder, or slower. You are not walking an assembly line calling. You are walking a handcrafted path designed by the only one who truly knows what you carry. And when you walk with that awareness, you begin to live with intention. You begin to speak with more weight. You start to show up to your everyday moments, not as someone who's just waiting, but as someone who is becoming. Because readiness is not just about what's coming. It's about how you show up in the meantime. Are you stewarding your current space with excellence? Are you faithful with what's already in your hands? Are you pouring into others without constantly checking the clock to see when it will be your turn? These are the places where real authority is cultivated. This is where power is born, not in a moment, but in a series of yeses that no one else sees. And one day those yeses will carry you into rooms you didn't campaign for, into positions you didn't have to network your way into impact you didn't orchestrate. Because heaven responds to surrender. Heaven multiplies obedience. This is the quiet work of God. It rarely makes headlines, but it always makes history. Because every person who's truly changed the world, every person who's left a legacy didn't just arrive. They were readied, they were refined, they were hidden, they were broken, they were shaped until their life could echo eternity. And that is what's happening with you, even when you can't see it. Even when the days feel ordinary, even when the door stays closed, even when the waiting feels like a weight, God is building something in you that no man can take away. And when you finally step into the fullness of what's yours, you'll recognize it not because it feels new, but because it feels like home, because you will have already become the person who belongs there. So keep becoming. Keep showing up. Keep choosing trust over control, because this is not just a pause, this is a planting. And one day the fruit will be undeniable, not because you forced it, but because you were faithful. And on that day, you'll look back with tears in your eyes and gratitude in your soul. And you'll whisper, now I understand. I wasn't just waiting for it. It was waiting for me to be ready. And heaven will echo back, well done. Because when God knows you're ready, nothing can stop what he has set in motion. Not fear, not delay, not even the doubt that once threatened to derail you. So take heart tonight, lift your head again, let your hope rise again, because you are not forgotten, you are not overlooked, you are not behind, you are being built, brick by brick, yes by yes, tier by tier. And when the time comes, when your readiness and his purpose meet in the sacred intersection of divine timing, you won't have to chase it. It will find you, because grace knows your name. Purpose recognizes your posture, and heaven always responds to the prepared. You'll see it, you'll walk in it, you'll carry it. When God knows you're ready. And as we reflect on what it truly means to be ready, let's remember that readiness is not confined to achievement. It is not boxed into roles, titles, or milestones. It is deeper than that. It is the quiet resolve in your spirit that says, even if it costs me comfort, I will obey. Even if it takes longer than I imagined, I will not abandon the process. That kind of readiness doesn't come overnight. It is forged in seasons when clarity is scarce, but commitment is tested. When prayers feel unanswered, yet you continue to pray. When progress is invisible, yet you persist. And when the world gives you every reason to question your value, but you root yourself even deeper in the truth of who you are, whose you are. I believe with all my heart that there are people here right now carrying vision far greater than their current environment. And it's not because you're missing something. It's because God is making room in you for the magnitude of what's ahead. He is not simply preparing what's coming to you. He's preparing you for what's coming through you. This is why the wait is weighty. Not because God is distant, but because he's deeply invested. He is intentional about every part of your story. The slow seasons, the silent years, the uncelebrated work, it's all part of the blueprint. You are not lost in the shuffle. You are being shaped on purpose, for purpose. And that's the kind of shaping you don't rush. Because when something has eternal significance, it requires divine timing. It demands that you grow not just outward, but inward. That you are not only capable, but also consecrated. That your gifts don't outgrow your grace. That your platform doesn't outpace your posture. We are living in a culture that elevates speed over depth, applause over authenticity, exposure over endurance. But God is not building you for a viral moment. He's building you for a lasting mantle. And mantles don't fall on demand. They rest on the shoulders of those who have learned to carry them in secret. So if you're still hidden, it's not because you're not worthy. It's because the oil is still being pressed. The character is still being refined. The vision is still being protected. And when the time is right, you won't need to chase your place. The place will rise to meet the person you've become. This is the assurance we carry, that the God who begins a good work is faithful to complete it. Not in fragments, not in half measures, but in fullness. You see, when you're truly ready, you don't just see the promise, you embody it. You don't just hold the blessing, you steward it. And you don't just experience the fulfillment, you extend it to others. Because your readiness is not just about you. It's about the people who are waiting on the other side of your obedience. It's about the lives your courage will unlock, the healing your journey will catalyze, the freedom your testimony will birth. And that's why the process matters so much. That's why you can't skip steps. That's why God won't rush what he's doing in you. Because your life is not a performance, it's a portal. It's a vessel for glory. And when God knows you're ready, it won't just be evident in what you achieve. It will be felt in the atmosphere you carry. You'll walk into rooms and bring peace. You'll speak and truth will cut through confusion. You'll create and something eternal will breathe through your work. You'll lead and people will not just follow, they'll rise. Not because you demanded it, but because you were shaped to serve. That is the fruit of readiness. It's not just favor, it's responsibility. It's not just influence, it's impact. And you'll carry it not as a trophy, but as a trust. So let this be your posture, not rushing, but reverent, not striving, but surrendered, not obsessed with arrival, but committed to becoming. Because becoming is sacred. Becoming is slow. Becoming is the evidence that you are still under the hand of a God who finishes what he starts. And if you've been wondering whether you're on the right track, if you've been asking yourself whether you missed it or fell behind, I want to offer you this truth. As long as you are becoming, you are exactly where you need to be. You are not too late. You are not too old. You are not too far gone. You are not forgotten. And that process is not passive. It is active. It is alive, and it is prophetic. Because what God builds in you is never wasted. He is the master architect. And even the broken pieces, even the detours, even the tears you cried in silence, they are all part of the design. You'll look back and realize God wasn't just preparing a place for you. He was preparing you for the place. You'll see that what looked like wilderness was actually training. That what felt like delay was divine development. That what you thought was rejection was redirection. And one day the clarity will come. One day you'll wake up and realize that your yes mattered. That the seed you sowed in faith, the sacrifice you made in silence, the perseverance you held on to when no one affirmed you, it all mattered. Because when God knows you're ready, what once seemed impossible becomes inevitable. Not because you earned it, but because you endured. Not because you hustled, but because you healed. Not because you mastered perfection, but because you surrendered to the process. So take heart, stand firm, keep becoming. Because whether you see it yet or not, something holy is unfolding. The God who saw you in the hidden place will reward you in the open. The God who met you in brokenness will birth something beautiful from your life. And when it happens, when the timing of heaven collides with the readiness of your soul, you won't have to fight for it. You won't have to force it. You won't even need to fear it. Because it will feel like grace. It will feel like alignment. It will feel like home. And in that moment, you'll know, this is what I was being prepared for. This is why it took so long. This is why it didn't work with them. This is why I had to be healed first. This is what I was born for. And you'll step into it not with hesitation, but with wholeness. Because you'll know beyond a shadow of a doubt, you didn't just arrive here. You were ready for this. You'll see it. When God knows you're ready,